Hello, I want to welcome everyone to the Power of Our Story. We are a place of safety for our protectors to process the journey together with others that get it. We are building a tribe in the gap where we are losing our protectors to hopelessness and suicide. We do this by storytelling as our stories connect us. You can reach out to us at thepowerofourstory.com and meet our amazing community that cares about you and understands. So please don't spend years of suffering in silence. So today I am thrilled to introduce our guest, and that is William Kieffer, otherwise known as Bill. I will be posting his bio and his resume on the description on the YouTube channel because it is just so rich and thick of advocacy and training and coaching. And his own personal resume is just amazing. But I'll give you some highlights. Bill is president and chief advisor of Kieffer and Associates Limited, an advisory firm specializing in military veteran career transition, leadership coaching, strategic talent management, and professional speaking and facilitation services. And you guys catch this one. He is the author of Military Career Transition, Insights from the Employer Side of the Desk, which released in July 2021 as the #1 new release in Amazon's job hunting category. This book is rich with tips. He's also a coach and coach advisory board member for the Honor Foundation. Had to highlight that because I love the Honor Foundation. He's a master trainer for Ranger for Life, a more elite transition, serving the U.S. Army's 75th Ranger Regiment, which also has a special place in my heart. And he's also on the board of advisors for Law Enforcement Connect, which provides career transition services to members of the law enforcement community. So Bill himself has served 12 years active duty as a U.S. Army officer in a variety of command and staff positions. And he's also married with 5 grown kids. And in his free time, he loves riding his Harley. So, Bill, what an honor to have you on today. Welcome. And again, after you are done sharing your story and what you're doing now, then we'll open it up for coffee and conversation.
Very
Welcome.
good. Thank you, Sarah. I appreciate it. And again, welcome everybody. It's an honor to be here. I'll tell my story, but if you have questions along the way, let's just have a conversation, okay? Anybody on here old enough to remember the Grateful Dead? Jerry Garcia. Yeah, well, my life story is a long,
Yes.
strange trip, man. It has never turned out the way I thought. So I'm calling in from a little town called Elmore, Ohio. There's 1,400 people here. It's not quite Mayberry RFD. We don't have the hills. But it is small town America. I was born and raised here. Went to University of Toledo with the express purpose of getting my commission as a U.S. Army officer. Our family has a long history in the military. We traced it back to the 1870s in the Dakotas. My granddad was in World War I. So I've been around the military a long time. 3 of my 5 kids are or were in the military. My oldest is 12 years enlisted Navy and is just got commissioned last August on the deck of the Missouri at Pearl Harbor. It was pretty cool. My next oldest son is an Army chaplain down at Fort Benning, providing chaplain services to infantry basic trainees. And my youngest son did 2 years as a military police officer. So I went to University of Toledo. I was a horrible student. I had no idea what I wanted to do or what I wanted to be other than to be an Army officer. I managed to, fake the professors out, get my degree, and go on and do 12 years in the military. Part of the process to moving into the military through that program is they ask you what branch of service you want to be in. I said, I want to be infantry. They said, great, you're going to be ordnance. I said, sure, whatever the needs of the Army are, I'm here to serve. Then they came back and they said, where do you want to go? Now, bear in mind, this was 1985. I was in from 85 to 97. So, Floyd, I think you said you got out in 96. Was that you? Okay. Yeah. So we're kind of contemporaries there, right? Well, I said it's 85. It's Cold War. Let's go to Berlin. What the heck? Why not? And they go, great. You're going to Fort Ord, California. I said, okay, we'll go there. I was part of the 7th Infantry Division Light. We did some good work out there with the 9th Infantry Regiment. Did some work in Honduras in '88, and then supported the Panama invasion, just cause. They said, hey, it's time for you to go for some more schooling. They sent me off to the officer advanced course. I got there, did okay. And they said, where do you want to go? And I said, wait a minute, I know this trick. I said, well, send me to Fort Bragg. I'm jump qualified. Let's go jump some. And they go, great. You're going to the 10th Mountain Division at Fort Drum, New York. I said, I'm not kidding, guys. Quit asking. So I went up to Fort Drum, 10th Mountain Division. That was 1990 through 93. We did some interesting work, helped with Hurricane Andrew, doing recovery relief down there in the Miami South-Dade area. And right on the heels of that, we went into Somalia for early Operation Restore Hope. So that was an interesting, difficult time. So I know there's a lot of discussion of PTSD and related things on here, and I get it. I get it. I got done with Fort Drum, and they said, "Hey, we're going to send you to Fort Lee, Virginia. We want you to be part of the crew that's going to write the curriculum for the new Combined Logistics Officer Advanced course." I said, "Yeah, okay, whatever. I'm going to quit asking. I wasn't kidding. Send me where you need to send me." And I went down there, taught a couple years, got selected for promotion to major, and very shortly thereafter, found out I was getting divorced. And my career trajectory got interrupted by my life situation. I had three then small kids. I said, okay, what am I going to do? Continue on with this great. Now, bear in mind, I had over 10 years and I was halfway to retirement. So what am I going to do? I walked away from the Army while I was on the promotion list because I wanted to be as close as I could to my kid. Now, all my kids turned out pretty good. No felons in the bunch, so I'm really happy about that. And I got out and I had a horrible transition. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know where to start. I didn't know what a start looked like. I didn't have a target identified. I didn't understand any means by which to get to a target. And quite frankly, I was in a pretty bad space for a while. Now, bear in mind, I was leaving the military. I was going through a divorce. I mean, it was a really, just pardon the language, it was kind of a shit show of a time in my life. Somehow, by the grace of God, I managed to get through that. I landed a job as a deputy director of economic development for the county I live in, a three-person department in a county office in the county I live in. And I didn't know what I was doing or how to do it, but somebody decided I could walk and chew gum and arrange things, and I landed. And I was an early statistics. Studies will show that folks that leave the military, and I don't have the data for law enforcement, but folks will tell you that for the military, veterans leave their first civilian job at about 45 to 50% in their first year. Yeah, I lasted about 8 months. I didn't last 8 months because I quit or got fired. I lasted 8 months because I had been networking and found a new opportunity that paid 300% of what I was getting paid where I was. And it was running a training department for an 1,100 person air freight facility. Like, wait a minute. I've been a battalion command, but a company commander, a battalion S3. I've been the training officer. I know how to do this stuff. This is cool. That started a really good career as an HR and talent management executive in an air freight company. I stayed there 11 years. I left there, went to a small family owned business that it just wasn't a good fit for me. Stayed about 4 months. And then I went on to be an HR executive in large multi-billion dollar manufacturing firms. In 2018, I decided I had just enough corporate life. I was just, I'm done. And I checked my finances and I checked with my wife, who remarried. We've been together 20 years. Life is good. Um, I go, I think it's time to try something different. She goes, why don't you hang out a shingle and start your own little coaching advisory practice? Because all you've ever wanted to do is really help people, military veterans and others, do this career transition work. You want to help people better understand themselves and how to lead better and perform better and make contributions to organizations. I said, holy crap, you've been paying attention. This is kind of cool. Um, so I did that with no idea how to be an entrepreneur, no idea how to start a company. And that's been, 4.5 years now, and it's been an awesome trip. So while I was doing the corporate stuff, people just kept coming to me, go, you're a vet, right? And I am a vet. Well, I'm transitioning, or my nephew's transitioning, or, I know somebody who just got out. Can you help them? opportunities just kind of kept finding me. I thought, you know what, there's something here. So the work I do today focuses in obviously the military veteran career transition space. I do, as Sarah mentioned, leadership and executive coaching for non-veterans also to help them better perform on the job. I'll work with organizations on strategic talent management, which isn't quite as fancy as it sounds. It's looking at your business strategy and plans through the lens of talent. Do you have the right people with the right skills in the right place, organized in the right way to do what you said you're going to do, which is work that I did in these large corporations. I don't know, it seems like a cool title though, so I call it that. I do a little bit of public speaking and stuff too. I work all across the country. I work virtually. I've had clients on the veteran side in Baghdad and Belgium and all over Europe. So yeah, that's kind of my story.
Well, thank you. That's very interesting. I'm gonna change the screen here. Bill, I really appreciate you coming on, and it's really neat to hear the backside of all your experience, kind of how you ended up. It really does sound like you are giving so much of what you did not have when you were transitioning, and also here, and that's just guidance in how to transition. So it's wonderful that you're giving that to people. And I think about too, I've heard a lot of people that during transition, when they go through a divorce, that can be the scariest time for our protectors. So the fact that you went through both of those things also, I think you can really relate to some of the hardships that people are feeling as they try to navigate this new season in their life of transition. So thank you so much for that. And thank you all the work that you've done, in your book too, guiding people. Yeah, I'd like to open it up for comments, for questions. And Chris.
Hey, Bill, thanks for sharing that. I love this topic, and we had a guy on here for a long time that was specifically talking about transitioning. I think that it's a very helpful thing. We had on, was fortunate enough to have a former NFL player, Doug Baldwin, on the show a couple of months ago talking about transition and how ununique it actually is. It's not a specific thing to military folks, but something that people identify for their entire lives. And I just kind of like to get your perspective on. We didn't tackle much of the actual transition part, but actually trying to find out what we think is the core of it and how to maybe change it from organically from the beginning of it to maybe it's not such an issue. I think that the military does a really good job, and first responders and all these organizations of indoctrinating us to be true believers, and this is who you are, and it's what you do. I think that that's a very healthy thing for a while, but at some point after you're bought in, if you will, we have to start educating our men and women in these professions that it's not all you are. It's not your identity. You're still a man, you're still a woman, you're still a husband, a father, a mother, all these other things. So from your perspective and all your experience, Bill, what advice would you give to young people that have bought in and been indoctrinated, whether it's to corporate America, first responders, military, whatever their organization is, so that that transition out isn't such a shock? Because I think that the big shock is, okay, this is what I've been my entire life. Now that I don't have this, now I'm nothing. And now I have to try to re-identify myself or figure out who I am.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. There's a lot to unpack there, Chris. Great questions. When I got out, I was Captain Kieffer. That's who I was 24/7. Whether I had the uniform on or not, I was Captain Kieffer. It was who I was. Now, as a related story, my dad's a physician. He passed not too long ago. His whole life was being Dr. Kieffer. When he retired, he was a licensed physician for 50 years. When he retired, he had nothing left. He had a beautiful wife, he had family, all this stuff. He didn't know who he was. I mean, he just declined fast and bad, right? And I see that with military veteran, law enforcement, professional athletes, because I do a little work with some professional athletes also. It's a growing part of the business. That sense of who am I when you're young? I mean, you got to buy in, like you said. You got to drink the Kool-Aid for a while. And there is a set of, whether it's law enforcement, first responders, pros, anything at a high performance level, there is typically a very robust process and rich resources and everything surrounding you to cause you to be successful, right? I'll just use the military example. You're going to come in as a new private, a new lieutenant, whatever, and you go through basic training, you go through advanced individual training or A school or whatever the service calls it. And guess what? Everything around you, from where you live to where you sleep to your leadership teams to the support stuff on post, the bowling alleys, the PXs, the chapels, the family support, it's all there to cause you to be successful. And then you fast forward 20, 25, 30 years, or maybe after your first enlistment or term of service, and there's a 3-day TAP program that says, congratulations, thanks for your service. Here's an example of a resume. There's this thing called LinkedIn. Make sure you register with the VA. Good luck. God bless. We'll talk to you later. Everything's gone. And now, for the first time in your adult professional life, you don't have that support structure around you. I'm getting to an actual point here. I really am. You don't have any of that around. So my advice to the folks that are starting out is you got to remember that uniform, whether it's green or blue or whatever color that uniform is, it's going to come off someday. And it may come off because it's been a great career and you finally chose to retire. It may come off because of injuries of whatever nature. It may come off because of downturn, whatever, right? Riffs or whatever, but it's going to come off. So as you are ramping up your familiarity and being part of the team and really building an identity as a law enforcement officer, fire department, whatever, you got to start thinking about what happens when the uniform comes off. Who is me inside of this thing? Now, there's lots of ways to go about doing that, and not everything works for everybody. Some of it's simple as sitting around, having a cup of coffee or a bourbon, unless bourbon's become a problem for you, like it did for me for a while, and going, okay, wait a minute, I don't need to solve this today, but what am I going to be when I grow up? Well, and I actually have a model that I've helped folks think about that. And there's 3 parts to it. Think of a little triangle. That's actually not a heart, that's it, but a little triangle thing, right? There's 3 pieces, I think, to helping define who you are and what you might be interested in when you depart your uniform service, okay? 1, what are you passionate about? Other than the career you have, what gets you fired up, man? What jazzes you up, not just in the rainbows and lollipops kind of way, but what's the stuff that causes you to get up and do the hard work? Okay? What's your passion? The second piece of that is, what are you good at? Not just the technical bits of your current job, but what are you good at more broadly? Are you good at building teams? Are you good at public speaking? Are you good at decision making? Are you good at auto mechanics or welding or knitting or whatever it is, right? And think about it without limits. Talk to your friends and family, okay? And start getting these big lists of possibilities. And the third piece is, you gotta, and nobody likes to do this, but you gotta consider the practicalities of your situation, okay? If you're in a position where financially you're burdened because of bad decisions or whatever else, what do I have to do to make the money? If you're in a position where geography is a requirement, okay, what can I do based on geography? And let me tell you a story. I guess this is a story show, so let me tell a story. Years ago, I was working with a young Army E5. He had been an avionics repair guy, rotary wing guy, married a girl from Toledo, Ohio, and decided to get out. He just didn't re-enlist. It was all good. He's a first-term guy. Didn't get out bad. Was going to move back to Toledo to be with her family and all that stuff. Everything's wonderful. And I go, great. What do you want to do? He goes, I want to fix helicopters. I said, okay. Here's a couple of resources, and go check wherever else you might want to check. Look at how many jobs there are for rotary wing repair guys in Toledo, Ohio. Look at shaking your head. You know where this is going, right? So he came back a couple days later and he goes, I don't see anything. I go, yeah, I know. I've been in this market a while. So what are you going to do? What's most important for you? Is it more important to you to use your capabilities on the aviation rotary wing repair work, or is it more important to you for the passion piece of your family? Because the practical situation says you can't do both. So that kind of three-piece model kind of got anchored right there. In his case, family won, and he decided to find a different kind of job that was related and he was good at, and we coached him into that. And he's doing fine. But really long answer to your point, you got to start thinking early about who am I underneath this uniform? What's my passion? What am I good at? And that'll evolve over time. And what's the practicalities of my situation? And as you find yourself considering it, the closer you get to actually getting out, start going, okay, what does that mean? What does it mean in terms of action planning? So on and so forth. So really long answer to a great question. Did I get anywhere
Yeah.
as close to what you were looking for, Chris?
Beautiful, beautiful. And I'm just looking at different perspectives for people to look at. And if I may follow up with one thing, people that spend a lifetime in service, whatever your service is,
Mhm.
from your perspective, what is your advice to people to find the humility to go from being top dog to now humbling yourself to starting over? Or is for me, there would be a bridge somewhere starting to have other hobbies and other things, like you said, to be good at, so that maybe when you step out of that one, there's not something else. But what's your perspective on that, Bill?
So two stories related to that. One is a guy who had no humility whatsoever. Okay. He was not from the law enforcement or uniform services side of the house, but I was running talent management for a $3 billion manufacturing firm, right? I had the whole world, literally. Okay. He was coming in to interview to be president of a $900 million business, right? This is a big job. He came in on paper, looking like the absolute perfect candidate, thinking, wow, how is it that we get blessed by his presence, right? And then he walked in my office, and the guy, dapper, properly dressed, presents himself very well. And I always kind of start off with these senior guys going, "Hi, what are we here to talk about today?" Because nobody asked that question. I thought, well, let's see if we can get them off their game. And he looked at me dead in my eyes, didn't extend a hand for a handshake. And he goes, "Well, I'm here to see if you can convince me to take this opportunity." I said, "Good, interview's over." We were done. We just ended it right there because he was just an arrogant ass. Now, the longer story to that, they hired him despite my concerns because he had all the right stuff on paper. He lasted less than a year and we fired him. Not because he couldn't get the results, because he couldn't interact with people. He was just an arrogant ass. Now, that's the one side of it. The other side is not enough humility or too much humility. I was coaching a young engineer in a $7 billion automotive supplier firm, and this kid was a rock star. One of those guys you talk to, a young guy, you go, "Oh, he's going to be somebody someday," right? But what was happening, and he didn't call me for the coaching, his chain of command did. And they were like, "This kid's really good, and you get him one-on-one, he figures it all out. He's got the answer, but you put him in a meeting, he doesn't say anything." So I go, "What's the problem?" He goes, "Well, I was always taught to be humble and this and that." And I won't bore you with all the details of it. But what we finally got to was I helped him realize that he was robbing the organization of the value that he brought by not speaking up. Right. So the question then is, how do you find the balance between the two? If you find, in my opinion, if you find yourself engaging with people primarily focused on what's in it for me and how do I best serve my need, you're probably leaning too far on the arrogant side. If you look at things and go, my solution is the only solution, my way is the only way, you're probably leaning too far on the arrogant side. And then obviously the inverse for the too much humility, right? When I coach folks, I'm a pretty direct guy. If I get the sense that you're being an arrogant ass, I'm going to tell you you're an arrogant ass, and it's not going to work. I don't want to give up too much direct information, but I was on with, I was going to join in the call last night, but then I had to call Sarah, and I won't get into the details. I was actually had a 2-hour counseling session with one of our law enforcement officers last night. I'm president of our village council. It's a small council. It's a small force, but this guy's a Marine Corps veteran, combat veteran, great officer. And we had a little discussion about style. He came to me with an issue and he kind of basically did the frontal assault thing, which he's known for. He's a pretty aggressive guy. Like, dude, if you want to get done what you need to get done, you got to find another way around to the objective. You cannot be in these people's faces. So, um, sometimes you just got to get that splash of cold water and go, hey, settle down there, cowboy. Now, the key to that when you're in transition is finding someone you can partner with, a coach, advisor, a mentor, whatever, that's got the willingness and ability and credibility to give you that feedback, and you take it. So anyway, again, another long answer to a great question.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Oh, Bill, that was a really great share. What a gift that is to be able to get that feedback. I mean, what a gift, because we don't always see our blind spots. And so to have somebody with your experience to be able to give that feedback, or really anybody with credibility, like you said, to give us feedback so we see how we're coming across and impacting people, is such a gift. I actually have a question too. So I love the logistics and the information that you just gave. For the person that is transitioning, that is in having a day where they are absolutely overwhelmed, they are feeling hopeless, they have been in maybe the spot that many of us on this call, you've been where you really have lost hope.
Mhm.
What can be that anchor to get you to take that next step?
So, and that's a great question. And without boring you with all the details, I've spent many days in that space when I first got out. I really did. And what I've discovered in hindsight is there's times you just got to let it go. Just go, okay, this day sucks, and I have to take a break from it. Sometimes your work is a grind. Well, transition can be a horrible grind. And it's a grind against something you're not familiar with, and it's a grind towards something that you may or may not yet have defined. You don't know the people, the process, the tools, the techniques. You don't have targets yet. So, you're doing a lot of stuff and you're not seeing a lot of return. Sometimes you got to give yourself a little bit of grace. I talk to folks with the military background, and my military veteran friends will remember this. Road marches, successful, well-planned road marches, build in breaks. They build in breaks to check your feet, change your socks, and adjust your load. And if you're having that kind of day, if you're facing that long haul where the load's starting to weigh you down and you're getting to a pretty dark place, figure out where you can get off the path, drop your ruck, take off the boots, check your feet, change your socks, and adjust your load some way. Now, it sounds kind of abstract and stuff. The particulars of that are going to look different for each of us. Okay. Maybe that means spending time with your wife or kids. Maybe it means getting on your bicycle and going up and down, PCH, whatever it looks like. Right. But if your transition can be a thankless, unforgiving time, you have to be your own advocate in your search. You have to be your own chief marketing officer in your transition efforts, but you also have to be your own best friend. You have got to take time to take care of yourself, whatever that means for you. And I would suggest, if you have other folks in your life that are important to you and value adding to you, use them as a pressure gauge. My wife is really good at going, hey, mister, you need to, check yourself here a little bit. Okay. Whatever that looks like for you. It feels like a nebulous answer, but you got to build in the brakes. You got to take care of yourself, man.
I think your answer just reminds people that they're not alone. I just heard somebody talk about how there's so many people. You look around and everybody looks so good, but you could have all these people living in parallel lives that are suffering in silence.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
yeah, your answer, I really just feels like, normalizes a very common battle. And
Yeah.
I really appreciate that. Just reiterating that we really have to be our own best friend, our own, friend, and take self-care seriously, that it's not selfish. And, that's what we try to do actually on the Power of Our Story. It's a good landing spot because it's, we can hear people like you We can find out all these different resources that are free for our protectors. There's not a cookie cutter version of what helps everybody, but there's a variety of resources to try.
Yeah, and that's I didn't mean to cut you off. Sorry, sir.
No, that's it.
Well, and it's a great story because I know in the military side, I think it's far less available for law enforcement, professional sports, and other career fields. But in the military, there's over 40,000 nonprofits that allege to help military veterans in training. Well, that's like going down the cereal aisle at the grocery store. There's so many damn choices. You don't know what to pick. I don't know whether I want Fruit Loops or shredded wheat, whatever. And for me, understanding that the transition space, one, is its own separate thing. Okay. It's not where you've been. It's not where you're going to land. It's kind of this swamp you got to get through. Understanding that it is its own thing and recognizing early before you're in it that it's got its own, processes and procedures and people and tools and techniques, and getting yourself prepared to at least identify them early is a great way to help make your transition a little less challenging. I tell folks that are in or approaching career transition, there's really only two things you got to do. At its core, there's two things you got to do in transition. You got to get prepared and you got to get known. That's it. Now, the list of things underneath that are gigantic. That's where the cereal aisle model comes in. Okay. But and I think this has helped me anyway when I've had bad days. If I can simplify it down to a few things and I can organize them, okay, that helps me. So I'm thinking, oh, I got all this stuff going on, and I've dealt with it as a recent entrepreneur too. It's like, oh my God, I've never started a business. How do I do this? Well, I got to get myself prepared. Well, prepared how? Well, I think, taking care of the admin stuff and taking care of marketing and whatever the topics are, you can identify them in that swim lane, right? The other side is I got to get known. Well, how do I get known? Well, you know what? I got to go call a few buddies. Great. That's networking. Well, how do I do that? Well, it's something you got to get prepared for. So for me, if I can break it down into little parts, and when I coach folks, I say, okay, what are we doing here? Right? The key to core things you got to do in transition is get prepared and get known. And you don't do either one of those overnight, right? You can't cram for the transition exam. You can't. It's impossible. I tried to get all through college, cramming on stuff didn't work. I barely graduated, right? I didn't do a hell of a lot of prep when I transitioned out of the military. I was doing my job because, I'm wearing the green suit, and that thing out there is kind of scary, and I don't know what transition is or how to do it. So I'm just going to focus on today. Well, guess what? When I did my signed out before I got my 214, they handed me my folder, said, great, we didn't have Indeed or LinkedIn or any of that. So they gave me two examples of a resume and said, here's 3 ideas for interviewing. Good luck, Godspeed, and we hope you land somewhere well. I didn't prepare. And I certainly didn't get known. So anyway.
Potent nuggets right there. It's so clear and straightforward. I really appreciate that, Bill. Jim, do you have any thoughts or comments?
I was just going to kind of, I think Chris put it in the chat, and he's right, the fire service, public services, that type of thing. We don't have a transition program, right? We don't have, there's nothing there. For me personally, I knew that my career was sort of coming towards that end after, getting close to 40 years. And I knew that I had some things, teaching and some other things that I thought, okay, those are things that I can probably get into afterwards and be relevant and, continue to give back and that type of thing. But I also knew that I could only ride my bike and play golf so much, right? I mean, it's like I knew I had to have something, and I was, kind of working towards some of those items. My transition was slightly unplanned. It just reached a point where I couldn't bring it to the table anymore. And And I basically, in a very short period of time, said, "That's it. I'm done. I need to move on." The good news was that I did that literally the month before that bicycle ride. And originally, because I was working, I wasn't going to be able to do that whole bike ride. I was only going to be able to do the last like 10 days. And so I was able to separate, right? I spent that time focused on getting ready for the bike ride, and then I went on a bicycle ride for 40 days. And a lot of time to clear my head and think about things and that type of stuff. And then I was able to come back and ease in. But like I said, there was nobody there, right? There was no program. There was nothing, you're really flying by your seat of your own pants.
Yeah, no, 100%. I did 22 years in corporate America as an HR and talent management guy, and I can't tell you how many times we had to reorganize or downsize or riff or whatever the term is. We let people go with 10 minutes notice, and here's your box, and literally you have 10 minutes to get. That's it. There are some services available for very senior people for transition work. It's better than TAP. But by and large, outside the military, to your point, there isn't this kind of transition support. A huge need, though, and I think especially a huge need for those folks that come out of I think medical folks need it too, whether it's frontline paramedics or EMTs, or nurses or paraprofessionals or whatever, because it's very particular cultures. And I guess if you kind of look at my BHAG, my big hairy audacious goal would be to get this ability, this recognition, to fill the need to help people make a transition from one to the other, whatever that one and the other is, to be more part of how our society works. Now, I'm just one small guy living in a small town, but it's just a damn shame, and think back to what I described earlier. When you join the military, join a police force, join a sports team, it's all there to support you to get in. And then when it's time to get out, thanks. And in the case of civilian employers, whether uniformed services or not, your job's probably filled within a week, or they've decided they don't need it, or whatever. I was just on a call with a buddy of mine, retired Army 06. He's been with the firm. He's been retired since 2015. I actually helped coach him through his transition back in the day. Yeah, he just got let go yesterday. Just reorganized. He was an executive vice president for a for-profit firm. And they go, you know what? Reorganized, lost a product line. Good luck. Thanks. Oh, shit. So I'm right there. Good for you, though, Jim, for having a way to deal with the trauma of change, the challenge of the transition right up front. And like I say, for you as a bicycle ride, honestly, if I'd have been smart, I'd have jumped on the bike and or the motorcycle and ridden for 40 days. But the divorce attorneys kind of didn't think that was a good idea. So anyway, Chris's hand is up.
Yeah, Chris.
Yeah, thanks, Bill. And it's awesome what you're doing. I've kind of sometimes dabbled in thinking about like literally sitting in the space that you're in, but I like to do the my stuff's all in the prevention, like at the start of your career, know who you are so that you can keep doing the job for a long time when you go to leave. It's not that whole thing like we're all talking about here today. You say about hopping on a motorcycle for 40 days. When I left the police initially, well, we can take leave without pay here, so we don't lose our job, but we stay employed, but we just don't get paid. And so you can take up to a year easy, 2 years at a push. And I was so far gone that I wanted a divorce and didn't even know if I was actually going to come back to my wife. But with the counselor's help, actually went and rode a motorcycle for 2.5 months around the U.S., which is the basis of this retreat. And I didn't know if I was coming back to my wife. I didn't know anything when I left. All I knew was I needed to go find myself, because I didn't know who I was at the time. I didn't know if I wanted to do policing or not. And quickly realized I do want to be with my wife, and I don't know if I still want to be in law enforcement, but I'm here to find myself. And so I talked to people and did things like this program, which I didn't know anything about, didn't know what to do. But when I handed in my resignation about 1.5 years after I took leave without pay, there was no exit interview. There was no nothing. And I was on a specialty squad I was on our version of Secret Service at the time.
Mhm.
I had the senior sergeant go, "Are you sure you want to leave? Like, we really like you. We don't." And for about a year, he was constantly nagging me to come back. He's like, "Come on, come back, man. We want you." And they did a bit of a ceremony for me and gave me a plaque and stuff a few months later after I left. But it's so, where I'm going with this is that, yeah, knowing who we are is so, like, when we got to leave, man, it's so important, because I remember I was on the trip and I was like, I don't know if I want to go back to law enforcement. I don't know what I want to do. I don't know what I can do. Who am I without the badge? It's what I've thrown everything into. So just want to praise for what you're doing. And yeah, it's just awesome. That's all I kind of wanted to say, and just kind of tell you, yeah, it's an amazing thing, and glad to hear that you're doing it, and you've jumped with so much passion into it.
Oh, well, thank you, Chris, and thanks for sharing that story. I know it's not a hard or not an easy one to tell. And as you're telling that story, I was trying to think of how could I offer something here on the call that's quick and easy and might be impactful for folks who are trying to figure out, who am I, right? And a thing that came to mind, and I'll offer it up to you here for, do what you want with it. When you're interviewing, which is downstream in the transition thing, right? But when you're interviewing, and you can use it beforehand, one of the questions that they'll ask often is, tell me about yourself. And what happens a lot of times is people recite their resume. They're given a chronology of activity and experiences. They're not telling them about themselves, right? Now, why do I share this now? Because I think it helps, even before you get to the interview, to help you at least get some idea of your identity. And here's the approach: 3 simple steps. The answer to the question of tell me about yourself is, first, I am. You got to answer, I am. Answer that however you want to answer it. Okay. I am a coach and advisor specializing in, or I could say, I am a problem solver. I'm a problem solver who's interested in understanding the details of situations as broadly and deeply as possible, because I want to make sure that what I deliver can be trusted. There's ways to answer it, and it's different for all of us, right? But if you can start with, well, tell me about yourself. Ask yourself the question, go, well, I am. The second part is, I have. What do you have? This is a statement of your experience, your education, the assets that you bring to bear, right? I am a coach and advisor specializing in military and law enforcement and career transition. I have over 30 years leadership experience, 22 years in corporate America, and over 5 years experience coaching hundreds of special operations and conventional forces folks through transition. You can add whatever you'd like to that. I am, I have, and the third bit is I'm known for. I am, I have, I'm known for. It's about the results that you get. Now, that's an interesting way to tell the story. It's great for interviews. But if you think about those days when you're sitting there having just an absolute crap day, I don't know who I am, I don't know what's important to, maybe you sit back and go, wait a minute, who am I? And just start writing stuff down. And you may have to iterate it to get some clarity. So now you're starting to define, some would say, you're kind of your brand. Okay. But in more broader, deeper terms, you're starting to document your identity, because it's no longer the uniform, right? When you look at the I have, you're starting to build that second piece of your triangle, right? You're starting to inventory all those great skills, capabilities, and experiences that you've gathered over your career. That's got to be positively influencing on a hard day, right? And when you look at the third piece, I'm known for, and you think about and document the results that you've been able to generate over the years, I don't know any human being that couldn't logically, no matter how bad the day is, at least feel a little bit better knowing, you know what, I am somebody, and I think it's this. I do have some things to bring to the world, and it's these things. And I have done some cool stuff over the year. It may only help a little bit, but if that little bit pulls you off the edge, gets you one drink away from the bottom of the bottle, whatever it is, that might be a tool that helps get you from where you are to one bit closer to where you might be. So anyway, I'll just offer that up.
I love that. I love that, Bill. It's something that I do a lot of with that, as well as that identity piece, because we can get lost in the job even when we're in it. You get lost in all the politics and all the messaging, all the cynicism, all the all the different things. And yeah, I've got a slightly different process of identifying who you are from a core level, but like mine is I help myself and others truly see who we are.
Sure.
And
Yeah,
that's
awesome.
that's my identity, and so I can attach that to anything that I do. And what I do is coach people on becoming the best police officer they possibly can be.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And the model, regardless of the model, let me back up. One of the things I tell folks in transition is you're going to hear a huge variety of answers and solutions. If anybody's asked 10 people about your resume, you get 15 opinions, right? It's just great. Don't worry about it. They can't all be right. The ones that are right are the ones that resonate best with you. Whether it's the model by which I identify myself, the process by which I get through those hard days, the action steps to get networking going, or what your resume format looks like. Take it all in. Don't dismiss any of it. The stuff that doesn't resonate so well, throw it in your toolbox. Maybe you'll pick it up later, it'll fit. Maybe you'll never pick it up again, but you can always have, one more tool in the toolbox. What the hell?
That's awesome, Bill. Oh my gosh, all the stories that I hear over the years. I mean, what you're speaking to is just so spot on. Thank you. We've got Cynthia.
Hi, Cynthia.
Hi, Bill. Bill, you know what? I have to tell you, I've been listening and taking notes the whole time. And I love everything from the beginning when you talked about how the uniform will eventually come off. I served in the Air Force for 12 years and I was Technical Sergeant Marinaccio. And I honestly, when I got through my transition, I didn't know who I was. And I had to redefine that. And I went through the transition journey and I did the networking and I had to put myself outside of the box. And all the things that you said, from getting prepared and getting known, that's how I ended up finding my next job where I work now. I've been here at Easter Stills for 8 years, working in veteran employment. Absolutely love it. Just like you said, what are you passionate about? I found this job because I worked with my former boss who used to work in this job. And he asked me that same question. He said, what are you passionate about? And it was, to me, to continue the service of helping my military brothers and sisters, which landed me where I am today, which I can obviously see that you have the same passion there. And when I do work with veterans, I ask them, what are you passionate about? Just like you ask, I ask, what are you good at? What are your what are your concerns, And it really feels good to have you share some of the same things that I've been doing, because it's kind of saying like, okay, good, Cynthia, you're doing good.
Well, I'm glad I can help.
Because you're such a professional, but I also did learn some stuff too. Like you talked about how you need to take it time and focus on you. Well, my mom always says you got to put the oxygen mask on you before you do it for anyone else.
Yeah.
And honestly, I can't hear that enough. It's constant. Like, thank you for the refresher on that.
I appreciate that. Yeah, no, I'm glad I could help.
And then the other things I'm going to take away is when you talked about the interviews, about the tell me about yourself question, because I go through that with so many people so many times, but I took some pointers from there, and I appreciate you sharing your knowledge. And I honestly, this is probably one of the best coffee and conversations I've been to, where it not only helped me personally but professionally. And I just honestly, I can't wait to read your book.
Oh my God,
I'm
thank
really
you.
excited.
I appreciate all that.
Yeah, thank you. This was really enjoyable for me. Thank you so much, Bill.
Very cool. No, and God bless you for, doing the work you're doing now, and, finding that passion. For folks that maybe haven't found that passion yet, don't despair. It will present itself. Sometimes life just has to happen the way it happens. And sometimes you just kind of gotta make the journey and make the best day you can of each day of that journey, knowing that, yep, it's whatever crap I went through today, there's a reason I went through it in my mind. And, at the end of the day, I reflect a little bit, okay, that was a horrible day. What did I learn from it, and how am I going to use it? Now, I've not always been in this space. Early on in my transition, I was nowhere near that space. It was bad. But if my bad experience could be helpful to any of you, just the solution is not at the bottom of the bottle. There will be sunshine, and everything that happens for a reason if you're willing and able to take it for what it is and apply it at least a little bit somewhere down the line. So.
Yeah. Oh, Bill, this is just amazing. This is really, really good stuff. You are giving such potent morsels. I'm excited about it. Is there anybody else that wants to make a comment or question before I ask my last question?
I have one more thing I want to.
Sure. Oh, you are muted?
Where are you located, Bill?
I'm in Northwest Ohio.
Oh, in Ohio. Okay.
I am in Ohio, but I get all over the country. So, yeah.
Let me know when you're in
cold.
San Diego. I would love to meet you. Love to shake your hand.
Okay, great. Well, the interesting bit is my son, the one in the Navy, he was in San Diego. Well, he was assigned to San Diego. He was on the Abraham Lincoln. He was gone more than he was in San Diego. But he just left. He's up in Whidbey Island now. So, yes, if I make it to San Diego, I'll get a message through Sarah maybe and get a message out.
We'll have a
Bill,
party.
let me know when you come up to Whidbey Island, man. You're about 40 minutes from me.
Okay. All right. Well, my son Nate lives in Oak Harbor.
Ah, beautiful. Okay.
Yeah. Awesome, man. Very
Hey,
cool.
real question last minute. Sorry, I had a work
Yeah.
meeting, so I just was able to log on now. I see this as recorded. Where would it be at if I needed to watch it again?
Oh, the Power of Our Story has a YouTube channel.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you very much.
And welcome, Eric. I don't
You're
know
welcome.
you, so it's good to have you on. Yes.
Thank
Feel
you.
free to ask your question.
That
Or
was
did-
it. That was it. I
That
just want
was
to make
it.
sure I could watch it afterwards because I had to pop in late. So
Yeah. Oh gosh, this is definitely one that everybody should watch. Yeah. So, Bill,
Mhm.
what would you want us to walk away from with this talk?
Okay. So a couple things. Transition is going to be hard. Don't make it harder than it needs to be. Okay. You've been successful doing whatever it is you've been doing. Lean on that success. Leverage all the good stuff that you've learned and brought to the world and figure out how to apply it to the transition space you're in and the landing spot you're going to be in. Now, you're not going to figure that out overnight. Okay. So start thinking about those things a little bit every day. Cup of coffee, cup of tea, whatever, you fill your cup with, right? I go, okay, you know what? I'm not sure where I'm going to land. My cross country bicycle ride is over. So now I gotta really diligently start taking some actions to land somewhere. Well, how do I get prepared? And how do I get known? Well, let's see, get prepared. Here's another thing I tell my military folks, and I'm sure you'll recognize this as law enforcement officers too. You're not going to hit a target you haven't identified, right? You might, but it'll be accidental and it'll take way too long. Okay. Start working on your target. Or said another way, what do I want to be when I grow up? And the answer is not going to come immediately. The answer is going to clarify itself over time. Keep asking yourself the question and let it evolve over time. Okay. Remember the triangle, the passion, practicalities, and capabilities. Okay. And remember to give yourself a break when you need it. I've got a gazillion other things if y'all want to keep talking, but that would, if I left with a wrap up, that would be the wrap up.
Okay. Thank you so much, Bill.